Hey, hopefully you're having a lot of fun playing the Demonic Pacts League. There's just about a little bit of time left. I'm kind of reaching the end of the league. I played through about two and a half accounts. I did try out like a third account, just testing out a few relics and stuff. And so I kind of want to go through my relic recap. If you've been watching my videos and doing my relic analysis, you're probably wondering what are my final thoughts now that we've kind of played through the league and had a lot of fun. Again, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of you for giving me all of your support, stopping by, watching the videos, leaving all the comments. It's just been super engaging and a lot of fun. So let's get into the agenda. So I'm just going to go through every single tier and I'm going to rank them at the tier level. And lastly, I'll kind of give you a full snapshot and my final thoughts of all of the relics. One thing I want to call out as a ground rule is I'm going to be hypercritical, which means I can only assign one relic per rank. And so I can't have like two S tier relics at the same tier, right? And that's just kind of to force hey, which relic is objectively better? You go to I'm at tier 4, which relic is the best one? And all of a sudden, Static gave you 2 or 3 S tier options. And you're like, oh my God, I'm kind of confused. And so we're going to kind of force that by only having one at every rank. So let's start off with tier 1. So tier 1, we had Endless Harvest, Abundance, and Barbarian Gathering. I only tested out Endless Harvest on my accounts just because I am a big AFK player. And so Endless Harvest by far for me was S tier. I might be a little bit biased here, but I do think that Endless Harvest, having a huge amount of AFK ability, which if you're racing or whether you're just playing casually, that is a huge benefit to kind of take a break, set up for a 30-minute AFK route while you're getting a snack, going to the bathroom, doing whatever, right? Or just passively playing throughout the day. Maybe you just got things going on. You can open up the phone or whatever. Endless Harvest is just absolutely phenomenal with auto banking. And also the 2x kind of resource that you get with Endless Harvest is also really powerful. It pretty much takes your 16x multiplier to a 32x multiplier for skills like mining, which are really, really slow. So now you can AFK them, but still get a reasonable amount of really good XP per hour. So I think Endless Harvest was by far the winner. I think Abundance was, for me, a close second. I think Abundance gave a lot of utility with all the gold you were getting early on. When we started the relic for combat masteries and demonic pacts, you only get a 50% rune save or 50% arrow or ammo save. And so buying runes and buying ammo early on was a little bit painful. Getting to, 80% or even 110% or so on was a little bit more difficult to get 100% regeneration. And so having a little bit of that early money from Abundance was actually really, really nice. In addition to that, there were a handful of tasks that were money dependent. I think the Demonic Throne, buying unlocks to boats or dungeons or whatever as well. So that was really nice. And Abundance, you were able to just buy training for fletching and other things as well. So I think Abundance was actually really, really powerful. I did have some of my friends pick Abundance and they definitely got a really, really nice boost. And lastly, kind of forcing to be hypercritical, I think Barbarian Gathering to me was just B tier. I think it was really, really fast training methods for those specific skills. I think the AFK added benefit to strength and agility was kind of minor. You could still get it and it would just double up if you were, got Kandrin and did the Barbarian fishing there, which was kind of nice, I guess. But I still think that Barbarian Gathering was just didn't have as much utility, even though it did really exponentially boost your skills, right? I think this is really good for the active player, but I think for the average player base, I think Barbarian Gathering just didn't cut it for me. I still think it's a really good relic, and if it comes back against different relics and we lose some of the benefits that we were getting from Endless Harvest or Abundance, I think there's a decent chance I might take Barbarian Gathering for sure. I just think, for me, I don't think it just was the overall best league relic choice for this tier. All right, so tier 2, Woodsman, Hotfoot, and Friendly Forager. Now, if you watch my Hotfoot and Woodsman video, this is probably one of the most debated relic choices of all. No one really likes training agility, or most people don't, right? And then Woodsman just had a ton of early utility, right? I think one of the best things about Woodsman that went under the radar, which is the unlimited whistle charges, because we started in Varlamore and the whistle has a ton of good teleports around Varlamore, the moment you finished your Hunter Rumors and you got your whistle at 10, you had infinite teleports around the region. And this is before even unlocking tier 3, which is really, really powerful. And so I think that was super, super awesome. And I think that's what kind of pushed me for Woodsman into S tier. In addition to that, there was actually a ton of tasks behind Hunter, way more than Hotfoot. Even though I picked 2 different sets of regions in my 2 main accounts, I still found Woodsman benefited me way more tasks than Hotfoot did. I think for Kandrian, Hotfoot does double up those agility courses, and so that was really nice for Kandrian pickers. But I also found that cooking is generally a relatively fast skill, and so Hotfoot's secondary ability was really just benefiting smithing, I think, overall. I don't want to discount that. I think that was extremely, extremely powerful. So Hotfoot is definitely a strong A contender going up into S tier. If we don't get the same power level that we saw with Woodsman, I think Hotfoot would be phenomenal. In addition to that, Woodsman also was giving you seeds, and that seed was going to help you fix your herb lore as well as your farming as well, right? Because you could plant certain herbs, you could plant certain trees, and that was getting a lot of XP. So I think Woodsman overall just had a lot of great utility. The really fast fletching was absolutely kind of crazy, right? And then the burning trees, just if you combine that with endless harvest, was a really good, powerful kind of AFK utility. I think friendly forager was just, to me, like, it's really nice. It fixes herb lore entirely. Like, you don't have to worry about secondaries. You just needed one set. And I remember on my first account, getting secondaries was definitely painful. On my second account, I did pick wilderness, which allowed me to get a ton of secondaries because the wilderness bosses just drop tons and plethora of secondaries. So I would actually say that, like, that actually kind of gave me an even lower rating for friendly forager for those of you who had good access to secondaries. Even though, in my first account, I did have Zaya, so I did farm like Sarachnis for those eggs, and that was a really good way because super restores are actually a really high XP, and it's not too hard to get the herbs myself for snapdragons. So I think overall it was pretty good. I think for those of you who really want access to potions, really want access to easy herb lore, I think friendly forager was great. But I wouldn't say that would be the choice for me going on. Alrighty, moving on to tier 3. So one thing I want to call out is I'm not going to give any of these an S tier rating. I think teleport relics are always really good and important. Gives you a lot of utility to go around the map. But I think we saw, last league with Clue Compass, that to me was a real S tier because not only did it fix teleporting, but it also fixed, the huge amount of Clue utility overall. And so I think the relics this time around are just nowhere near that power level. And so I don't think it's, really justified to give any of them an S tier rating. I still think that they're really important, and, we all have to choose what our relics are. So I actually think that Bank Heist is an A tier. Evil Eye just had a huge amount of kind of upset early on in the game just because you don't really are teleporting to bosses. It doesn't really help you in the early game. There are a few nice teleports to banks like Huey, but you still would get that with Bank Heist. And because you can teleport to the bank near Huey, you get a Huey teleport, right? Bank Heist just has a way bigger list of teleport options. And then Jagex did add an update to add even more teleport options to deposit boxes and things like that, which made it super powerful. I think Bank Heist was probably the most slept on relic. It's probably just because the other two were just so new and unique that people were like, Bank Heist. And, Bank Heist in the past was against like Fairy's Flight, which we don't have this time around. And so I think people like also underestimated it at that time. I think we need to stop really underestimating how good Bank Heist is as a teleport. It brings you teleports to all the raids, brings you teleports to some bosses, and overall it's just really good kind of relic overall. And it's going to give you a really good early boost, which I think if you went like Hotfoot and you didn't have like the infinite whistle charges around Varlamore, right? We don't get the pendant until a little bit later as well. I think Bank Heist was really going to fix you for most players overall. And so I think Bank Heist is definitely just the hands down A tier. I picked Evil Eye in most of my accounts except for one. I think that one, Evil Eye, was just really good, especially when I picked Zones, Wilderness, and Asgarnia, getting teleports to the God Wars bosses, getting teleports to the Wilderness bosses, and because they were PVM kind of heavy content focused, I think Evil Eye was just overall really powerful, even for my main account where I didn't have access to as many bosses. Like I remember Kandrian, I think, has Thermi and Kraken, and that's it, right? And it's kind of funny, you only have 2, but those 2 bosses are a little bit annoying to get to, and because they're really important for a lot of drops and tasks, I think it was actually actually really nice to have that kind of secondary utility. There are also a lot of good teleports just generally around Kandarin, so I actually didn't feel like I missed out. Once you get the Artie Cloak for the Artie Farm teleport, right? In addition to that, you also have it to the monastery for quick prayer region early on in the game, and then you also just have good teleports around Kandarin just in the base, spell book and jewelry as well, right? And so I think that kind of solved that problem, so I didn't really miss too much about it. And Evil Eye added that secondary boss teleport utility, which was really nice. Map of Alacrity. So I picked this on like my half account is what I would call it. I didn't really play that account all the way through. I picked it. It was really, really clunky to kind of look at the map. I don't memorize, agility shortcuts, even though there are a ton in the game, knowing which one goes where. I think if you had a really good organized list and then you kind of like memorize which ones would go where, I think that would be better. But I found it so poor and kind of clunky to use, even though there were a lot of good shortcuts. That I just didn't like it. On my second account, I didn't really train agility that much. I think I only had like 70 agility, and so Map of Alacrity would have like been worse if I picked it on that account, just because I had way, way lower agility levels. I couldn't actually use all the shortcuts and go on to the other side, which I think is kind of painful as well. So I think for that reason, I think Map is just way clunkier. It's definitely worse than some of the teleport relics we've seen, and especially I think, in my opinion, the worst at this tier. All right, tier 4. Now this one was a little bit interesting one. I think, Butler's Bell Transmutation had a lot of kind of fight over it. I think I'm actually going to start from the bottom here. I think Conniving Clues is a great relic. It's definitely not as powerful as even like Clue Compass as we had last league, but it is still really, really nice, giving you the minimum amount of steps, giving you, double clue loot and stuff like that. There are still a lot of tasks behind clues, wearing sets of armor, wearing a lot of gear. It does kind of fix your early gear kind of progression a little bit, because you can get some good, range gear, some good mage gear, prayer gear, maybe some basic armor and weapons as well. And so I think Conniving Clues is pretty nice, and because of the tasks, I think it's really, really helpful. I just don't think it's really that powerful in comparison to these other two relics. So Transmutation, this is what I picked on my first account, and then my second account I picked Butler's Bell. Transmutation had some really, really cool combos. I put out a video if you didn't see that. If you had Zaya and you had Transmutation, you can just get infinite seeds, because you just level up your seeds up into spirit seeds and then trade them for seed sacks, and then just keep repeating that process, and you just have infinite seeds. Also, Transmutation allows you to just have the highest level of whatever material you wanted. I remember early on there was a crafting task that I did to craft different d'hide bodies and stuff like that, right? And I was just able to kill some cows, convert that cow hide up into the tiers of whatever hides I wanted, and I just able to craft that gear. It really helped fix a lot of tasks. So I think Transmutation actually was really, really powerful in the early game to fix a lot of tasks. In addition to that, I transmuted a ton of ore all the way up to rune to sell it to make money as well. So I think Transmutation was just really, really powerful. I still think that, overall Butler's Bell was just way more utility. Butler's Bell, because it had the option to both give you the raw resource or the non-raw or the process resource, it was able to give you tons of XP. Now, once you got Butler's Bell, you could just AFK your way into 99 crafting, I think within a couple of days, which is absolutely really, really blasted XP, which is kind of crazy. In addition to that, you can just AFK all the other skills, 299. It would take a lot of time and kind of take almost, I would say, most of the duration of the league. However, I think one thing that got slept on a lot was Butler's Bell's unprocessed resource. If you got unprocessed resource, I think you were getting 4 or 5x of that resource, and you were able to just go and train that skill yourself. Now, for example, cooking, right? You can just get the raw fish for a day, right? And then you would have enough fish to go and get, I think, pretty close to 99. I think in one day I was getting somewhere around maybe anywhere from 7 to 10 mil. It just depends on how good your rolls are on the higher fish and stuff like that. But it was just giving you a ton of XP to kind of go and just finish the skill if you wanted it to. Otherwise, you can do the slow AFK route. So this is a relic that gives you both an AFK versus kind of passive active kind of skill. This is actually, I would say, better than the Kingdom Miscellanea kind of one, because it gives you that AFK kind of skill training, but it also gives you resources. In addition to that, I think one of the most powerful, valuable things for Butler's Bell was the unfinished potions, right? No one likes cleaning herbs. No one likes putting them into a vial of water. That is really tedious and kind of painful. And if you don't have like desert to kind of do that just in like a paid flow, I think that's actually really exhausting for herb lore training. Even if you were making the secondary saves with like the herb lore, friendly forager, you still have to do that step, and that's just so painful. And the fact that Butler's Bell solves that is just really nice. In addition to that, like smithing, you process that into bars. That's also super powerful because, smelting your ore, if you don't have blast furnace, is actually really painful. And if you don't have other good smithing training methods, you still get the bars, and then you can just go and hammer out the bars into the gear and items, which is a lot actual faster training method as well. So I think Butler's Bell just had a really good mix of both AFK and active escape kind of utility. It fixed a lot more skills, in my opinion, that were kind of just difficult to train with, right? And because of that, I think it was just really, really nice. One little kind of tidbit, if you didn't utilize, Butler's Bell gives you those bow strings. You can put it onto the bow spool. I think you need to put like 10,000 on a bow spool for a 200-point task, which is just really nice kind of like extra benefit. So yeah, I think Butler's Bell was just absolutely phenomenal. Transportation was still really close second, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to put it down into an A tier. All right, moving on to tier 5. Now, this one was actually a really difficult choice for me. I actually picked Larcenist on both of my accounts. And I never picked Nature's Accord, and I did reload into Soul Harvest. Now, I was really debating on whether Larcenist should be S or Soul Harvest should be S, and then which one would come second. I ended up going with Soul Harvest. Now, Soul Harvest is the only relic in the entire tier that really fixes rune crafting, and rune crafting does have a good amount of tasks, and getting it to 99 and getting it to 50 mil is really important if you want to kind of get a lot of points and kind of go towards completion. And so I think Soul Harvest was the only relic that fixed that, whereas like Thieving is a relatively easy skill to train. It is a little bit click intensive, but nonetheless, it does have good XP rates, and you don't have to like run out, go get essence, come back, and keep doing that run and loop, right? And so I would say from that perspective, Soul Harvest gave you a utility that none of the other relics in the entire kind of distribution gave, right? Not that Thieving was actually fixed by any other relic either. I just think Thieving is comparatively an easier skill than rune crafting, right? In addition to that, Soul Harvest gave you Prayer, and Prayer is not so bad because we have Varlamore, and you can do like the Blessed Bones shards and do that process. It's not too bad, but I think Soul Harvest just overall had that 2 skill kind of really nice utility, whereas Larcenist gave you that single focus around thieving only. That said, I still pick Larcenist, and I think one of the benefits of Larcenist was also kind of region dependent. When I did pick Kandarin on one of my accounts, Larcenist actually had a ton of thieving tasks just because Kandarin is kind of like the thieving region, and so it was really a great combo. But I don't want to swing a relic based off of a specific region combo just because you're not going to be necessarily picking that, right? Whereas Soul Harvest, regardless of what region you pick, even if you didn't pick Zeya, you could still craft tons of nature runes for fast experience. If you had, Kandarin, you could use the Orania altar as well, right? If you had Zeya, you could do the blood or the soul altars as well. So overall, it was pretty good, and it is kind of region independent, whereas Larcenist was a little bit more region dependent for task benefits, but it was a really nice AFK utility. The one benefit of Larcenist, I guess, is once you do unlock Karamja, you can steal from like the gem stall and the ore stall there, which is really nice. You can sell the ore back for money, and so I think Larcenist did have that utility. I just think Soul Harvest to me was just it was a 0 effort kind of skill, and it gave you a fix for 2 kind of difficult skills, both Prayer and rune crafting, whereas Larcenist just kind of fixed 1 big thieving skill, right? This is why everyone who picked Larcenist, everyone has a Rocky pet, nothing unique, whereas Soul Harvest, there's no Prayer pet, unfortunately, but you can still get the rune crafting pet, which is kind of cool, a little bit more rare than Rocky in leagues. So I think that's why Soul Harvest is the S tier. Larcenist, very, very close second. I absolutely loved picking Larcenist on my accounts as well. And lastly, we're left with Nature's Accord. Now, even if you didn't have access to Zeya and you had access to Tithe Farm for like instant 100 mil XP, you could still train, farming really, really fast. Nature's Accord did fix 2 skills. It fixed both farming as well as herb lore to some degree, right? But if you remember when I was talking about Butler's Bell, even though you get the herbs, you still have to clean them, put them into vials. That is still a very painful process. So I'm almost kind of discounting that fact. I would say Nature's Accord does help you with secondaries as well. You can plant a bunch of limpworts, right? You can plant snape grass for secondaries, so that does help a little bit. But nonetheless, it's still, I would say, primarily a single skill focused ability. Also, if you pick regions that don't have good farming patches or something, I guess it doesn't matter so much because we have Varlamore and you have like the base kind of areas to plant both like a caliquat, a tree, a hardwood, and the regular kind of, allotment and herb patches and farming and flower patches. But I would say even with those regions, it's still, I don't know. I just didn't find as much utility. What is nice about Nature's Accord is it does give you, Fairy's Flight, which is a secondary teleport. So if you didn't pick Woodsman on tier 2 and you didn't have that whistle, the Fairy's Flight teleport would be an extra secondary one. You could stack with maybe your map or maybe your Evil Eye, right? I would say the Bank Heist is still overall really powerful teleport. But that was a nice secondary kind of save for teleports overall. So yeah, I think forcibly for my reasons, I think Nature's Accord is just not as powerful as the other ones. Don't get me wrong. I think if Nature's Accord is up against some other relics next league, I think it's still going to be a really, really solid choice. And just depends on what skills you want to focus on and finish. All right, let's move on to tier 6. So at tier 6, we had Culling Spree, Eternal Sustenance, and Grimoire. I picked Culling Spree. I also picked Eternal Sustenance, and on my second account, I did actually reload back into Grimoire. Very interesting kind of choice here. So I've kind of tested out all 3 of these relics. I did find Culling Spree just overall better. Being able to somewhat pick your Slayer task was a lot better. On my non-Culling Spree account, I was burning through I had 0 Slayer points all the time just to try to force the tasks that I wanted. Even though I had access to Wildy and, was getting access to Wildy tasks, I still didn't want to do half of those tasks. And so I think Culling Spree was just a lot nicer, especially when Jagex made some of the fixes so that the Slayer Masters are giving the tasks that they're supposed to give as opposed to the generic list. And then you can kind of customize your block list and then go from there. I think that was kind of nice a little bit. Now, if you didn't have a lot of quests auto-completed and a lot of quest points based off of your regions, you didn't get access to some of the extra block lists. And so I think there was a little bit of that kind of like back and forth concern. But again, Culling Spree was just really, really nice. Extra superiors, tons of XP, getting to like 25, 50 mil Slayer. A little bit difficult at the 35 to 50 mil, but I think 25 mil was relatively easy for anyone who picked Culling Spree. Just picking good Slayer task and blasting, especially because some of the builds could AFK, like Jad. So you can pick up a Jad task, go AFK, and get tons of XP from the fight caves anyways. So overall, I think Culling Spree was just really, really nice. It did fix a skill that we need to kind of get points and tasks on. There's a lot of tasks for killing like, superiors and so on. And so I think this relic is the only one in this tier that actually helps you with tasks as well as kind of, skills and total levels and so on. Right. Moving on to Eternal Sustenance. I think this is a really slept on relic. I did pick this on my second account. There's a ton of good utility overall. Pretty much once I got my 3 food items, Angler, Karambuan, and Strange Fruit, I just kept it in my inventory. I just knew where it was. Just click and eat. Remember, clicking and eating takes you away from attacking because of the tick delays. So that is a little bit of a nuance and knowingness. But nonetheless, I think this is just really, really nice. You get your few basic food items, and you're pretty much set for the league. And then whenever you're doing any difficult content, you can just bring infinite food. With Thorns, Heals, and the food, it did help trivialize some of the content as well, which is really nice. And so I think Eternal Sustenance is just really, really valuable for most players. There is some really difficult content, like the 6 Jads and like the league-only challenge, where even if you just overeat, it's not going to save you. You do want to keep attacking. And killing monsters. And so I think there is a little bit of a trap there, but I think for most bosses in the game and most content, I think the infinite food is actually really, really nice. It also kind of if you're doing raids, you don't have to worry about prep or food or anything like that. You just bring in your 2 items and you're good to go. Right. And lastly, we're stuck with Grimoire. Now, Grimoire, I'm not giving a B tier, even though B is open, right? We went from SA directly to C. Grimoire, even after playing it, I think the damage and the power is nice. Getting all the prayer unlocks. On my second account, I didn't have access to Zaya for the range or the magic, prayer skulls, and I also didn't have access to Kandarin, so I didn't have access to piety as well. So Grimoire kind of fixed that. One huge hurdle that I ran into with Grimoire is because I didn't have access to Desert Treasure and that wasn't auto completed, I wasn't actually able to wield the ancient staff that I got from killing the Chaos Fanatic in the Wildy, and so I didn't have a good way to auto cast it until I got the Huey wand for ancient magics. So I would just say that was a little bit annoying to kind of like not be able to auto cast ancient magics and like requiring a specific staff that could. I did have to go do a bunch of Huey kills to get that, Demon Hunter wand so I could have that. So that, I think that's like a little tidbit, kind of annoyance. Like you have to remember, like if you're going to cast a certain skill, do you have the right setup to auto cast it? Aside from that, there's just not a lot of utility. It doesn't help you fix any skills. It doesn't help you fix any tasks. It doesn't really help you anywhere else other than just kind of a little bit of a damage boost, right? And so from that perspective, I think Grimoire was probably just so low value. I think in the past when we had like the alternate prayer scroll skills as well, I think there was a little bit more damage and a little bit more utility there. But I still think that in this rank, it's just not good enough, right? All right, moving on to tier 7. So Reloaded versus Flow State. I reloaded both times. I never picked Flow State. I think Reloaded, anytime you ever see this relic, it will almost always be S tier. The only time I don't see Reloaded being S tier is if you get it at like a tier 3 or tier 4, and you really just don't care about the tier 1, 2 relics, right? Remember, tier 3 is usually like the teleport tier, so you're never going to really reload into a secondary teleport relic. But Reload is just, they're so powerful. You have the option to kind of pick any other relic to round out your ability. It will just always remain S tier. I think there's no debate in the entire community that Reloaded is probably just one of the most powerful relics overall. Moving on to Flow State. Now, this one is very interesting. I think if you were maxing and going for the 50 mil all, I think if you had picked certain other skills, I think Flow State really just sped up your entire overall gameplay. Personally, as an AFK player, casual player, I think Flow State, like, if you're retired, you don't have any other responsibilities or whatever, and you have time to play the game, I think that's when you're really going to max out the benefits of Flow State, because if you're actively playing the game during the leagues, Flow State is going to give you the most amount of benefit. I think aside from that one caveat situation, which I think doesn't apply to most players, I think Reloaded is just far, far superior. And in addition to that, I don't think Flow State even really comes close to like an A or B tier relic in general. It does fix and speed up a lot of skills, but it still is like, it doesn't actually help the skills innately themselves, right? You still have to get the resource if you're going to do like faster smithing or fletching, right? And like, for example, like Woodsman really helps fletching with like the process 10 items at once, way better than Flow State does, right? Even though it speeds up everything by a tick, right? And so I think there's just so much more utility to fixing your other skills with other relics that I would almost just reload into something else, which just makes Flow State just kind of less enticing entirely. All right, last up, we're at tier 8, Minion, Flask of Fervor, and Executioner. So Minion, definitely S tier. I definitely had a lot more fun with my Minion. I really appreciate Jagex adding an auto respawn, kind of like you start attacking and the minion spawns, so you can kind of AFK content. The minion's always spawning and killing things, especially with AoE. What's really, really nice, and I think what kind of makes Minion far better than the other two, is the auto loot with noted items. I think this is absolutely really, really powerful. If you're in the Wildy, you'll just auto loot and note all the items, or anywhere, any boss or any content. You can set your price thresholds. There were a lot of bugs, I would say, with the price thresholds. Like my character kept picking up adamant things, even though I think my price threshold was like a couple thousand GP. Far more expensive than whatever the high alch or the GE value of that adamant item was. So I don't know why like my character kept picking up, I think it was like adamant two-handers and adamant axes. But aside from that bug or issue, I really didn't care because Minion was just so nice at picking up items. On my second account, I didn't have Minion, I had Flask. And I did AFK killing, dragons in the Wildy, and I accidentally dropped the Visage while I was AFK, and I did lose it. And if I had a minion, it would have picked it up. It would have been really nice. I did have to go back AFK, and I got another one. I think in like 2000 KC, I think I got about maybe 2 black dragons in the Wildy. So kind of on rate, but nonetheless, I would say that Minion is just really, really nice. The consistent amount of damage I found to be really, really valuable. The Flask is really nice burst damage. But yeah, Minion, if it ever comes again at this power level, this is like the Guardian on steroids. I will definitely pick it. The auto looting is just so nice. Quality of life, right? And then if you pair this with like Soul Harvest is automatically converting your bones into soul shards and minions. You never see loot on the ground. Like how many times are you in the wilding killing monsters and like you can't even look at your screen because the loot on the ground is just so messy and like kind of stacked up, and you know you can filter it out and you know kind of remove it from your list, but then when you go back to the main game you have to add it back. It's just really, really painful. The Minion solves a lot of that, which is really, really nice. Obviously, you're not going to pick up some of the low value items as well. But again, I think Minion is just a solid freaking pick. So good. All right, Flask of Fervor. I did pick this on my second account. There's a really lot of fun combinations going into, you know, any bosses, having the Flask to blow up things. Also just like killing a bunch of monsters for Slayer, you know, because I didn't early on have an auto burst kind of thing. Just aggroing all the monsters and then using the Flask to kill them all. And then, you know, kind of expediting the reset by killing more monsters was good. Yeah, Flask was really fun. I think in a lot of areas of the game, it just had a lot of cool like utility. I never found it to be really overwhelmingly exciting. There was something that I did that was really, really kind of crazy with the Flask. It was nice to kind of extra spec, extra prayer regen. Didn't have to worry about, you know, sustaining some of those things with like prayer pots or food, even though I guess food doesn't really matter because I was doing a lot of thorns and healing and water mage stuff. And so I think Flask was just, I picked it as a fun tryout. I definitely think it's really strong as a tier 8 relic choice. I think it's a A tier. I think if you don't have Minion next time and you have Flask and you have a couple other options that are not as great, I would definitely pick Flask. Last up, Executioner. And you're like, hey, this is C tier. Why is this not B tier, right? I think Executioner is just, it's very boss dependent, right? You can't necessarily use it on a lot of things, especially if you can hit like a 50 or 100 damage, right, easily, then Executioner loses its value on a lot of lower HP monsters, right? And so like if you are doing raids and you're going to do a ton of raids, maybe you're looking for a raids pet this time, right? And so you're going to do a ton of raids. I think Executioner's Axe, I definitely saw them absolutely help shred through raids and bosses. But aside from that, if you're not picking raids regions, right? So a lot of my other relic choices, I kind of said, hey, because it's a region relic combo, I don't think it's as good. Executioner is like an even more limited version of that, where it's like a region and boss specific combo. And so because of that, I don't think I can really give it anything more than a C tier. It is really nice for the content that it helps with, but overall just not as powerful, especially because our damage is just so high in leagues. It's not going to save you on a lot of the other bosses and content. All right, so here's the complete list. Overall, I think the league had some really, really powerful relics. You can see that only a handful of actual relics moved down into the C tier. No D tier relics, no relics that were just absolutely atrocious that I would just never pick. I think the C tiers had good choices for very specific utilities if you're going for specific builds, right? I think the B tier has kind of what I would consider the lowest value, lowest impact, even though I know a lot of you picked it. I think it's, you know, B is just going to have some stragglers overall, but I think the S tier, having 7 options here, adding in whatever teleport choice of yours would work, I think that's probably going to be the best play overall experience for me. I did pick most of these relics on my accounts. I did have a lot of fun with them, and hopefully you had a lot of fun too. Hey, and I know this video went on really, really long. If you stayed tuned till this point, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all the engagement that I've had this league. Definitely subscribe if you'd like for more videos from me. Comment if you are interested in other sort of like relic recap review type of things for it. I'm probably thinking of coming up with a few other videos like this one. And definitely smash the like button if you found this fun. Thanks for watching.